In this tutorial, we're going to take the vectors that we created in the drawing part of this tutorial, and we're then going to toolpath them to create this very nice decorative piece. And what may look like quite a complicated design is actually achieved with quite a few basic toolpaths. We're only going to be using a profile toolpath, a pocketing toolpath, and a V-carving toolpath to actually achieve what we've got on screen. So let's start by opening a fresh copy of the software, and we're going to open the file that we created in the drawing tutorial. Don't worry if you didn't join in with that, we do have a pre-prepared file which you can use that's in the projects folder. So just go to open an existing file, locate the file, and then click open. Now if you remember back to the previous tutorial, we did conveniently organise all our vectors onto different layers. So if we just go to the drop down here, you'll see that we've got our outline shape, and then we've also got the top and bottom grooves which we added, and then we've also got the foils, and we've also got the V-carve shapes as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn off everything apart from the foils layer, as the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to create a pocket toolpath. So I'm just going to turn off all these. Now as you can see, the V-carve shape was the last active layer, but now we've turned the visibility off. We need to make sure that we do select the foils layer to make sure that that's now our current active layer, as it's the only one visible as well. So once we've done that, we can click close and we can go straight over to the toolpaths tab. So you can do that by clicking this or hitting F12 on the keyboard. And the first thing that we should always do, as I always say, before we do any toolpaths, we need to make sure that our material setup is complete. So let's go to the material setup section and just click on the set button. I do want to make sure that the Z0 is off the top of the block, and just check that our thickness of the material is 1 inch. I'm going to change the XY datum position to be in the lower left for machining, and I'm going to make sure that the clearance, plunge rates and the home start position are all okay for my machine. Obviously if you're going to be setting this up, you want to make sure that the clearance and the plunge rates are all going to be above any clamps that you may have in the way holding the part in place around the machining area. And that also goes for the home start position. So if that's all okay, just press OK on that, and then we can go ahead and select our vectors for the first toolpath. So the vectors that we're going to be using are the outer circles, so just select all of those, hold shift down on the keyboard while you're selecting all of these, and we're going to be using the inner Quatrefoil shapes. So just select all of those, because we're going to be pocketing in between this space here. So once we've got all those highlighted, come over to the toolpath operations and select the pocket toolpath option. So for this toolpath, we're going to have a start depth of 0, 0, so from the top of the block, and we're going to be cutting down 1/8 of an inch. So just specify 0.125 in there. We're going to be using a 1/4 inch end mill, so just make sure that you have one of those, and make sure that the speeds and feeds are all accurate for your machine if you do plan on running this, and just press OK. For the pocketing strategy, I'm going to use an offset, so I'm going to offset between these two vectors, and the next final thing that I need to specify is a name. So I'm just going to specify here the name, so I'm going to call this pocket circles, and then I'm going to click calculate. And as you can see, the software has brought us to the preview toolpath form. While we're here, we may want to change the material colour. So I may want to change it from what we've got currently set as oak medium. I may want to pick cherry. So once we've picked the material colour that we like, we can then go ahead and preview the toolpath. So, and just to make sure that we can speed things up a little, we can also just make sure that the animate preview is unchecked, so that we won't simulate any of the toolpath being drawn on the screen. Another thing that we can do is we can also apply a toolpath colour for this, just to make it a bit easier on the eye to see what has been machined away. So you just select this option here to select a toolpath colour, and from the drop down we can select any colour. That just helps us to visualise what has been machined away from the material block a little easier. But also we can also use this function to also help paint the preview picture if we were going to save, say, a preview image to send to our customer for approval. So I'm just going to go back to using the material colour for the machined area away, and then I'm going to close this preview toolpath form. I want to now go back to the 2D view, but one thing I could do is I could work with both the 2D view and the 3D view at the same time. So to do this, I can go to View, and then I can go to Tile Windows Horizontal. And also you can see that next to it is the shortcut key. So you'd press Page Down on the keyboard, and then it will split the view in 2D on top and a 3D down below. So the next toolpath I want to concentrate on is I want to make an inner profile around these outer circles here. So what I'm going to do is I do actually want to keep these outer circles selected. I'm just going to hold Shift on the keyboard, and I'm going to go around and select each of these inner quatrefoil vectors, and it should deselect them whilst keeping the other circles highlighted. So once we've done that, we can go over to the toolpath operations and select the profile toolpath option. For our start depth, we've already machined away an 1/8 of an inch of material, as displayed down the lower right here, if we just hover around on the 3D view. So we want to make sure that our start depth is an 1/8 of an inch, so just type in there 0.125, and we also want to cut down a depth an 1/8 of an inch as well. So in the cut depth, just type in 0.125 as well. Make sure that we've got our 1/4 inch end mill selected. If you haven't, just go into the database and select it. For this toolpath, we want to make sure that we're just profiling on the inside of these vectors. So it runs in between these two vectors here. So just make sure that when we come to this option, we select to do it on the inside. Then we can just go down and give this a name. So I'm just going to call this Profile Outer Circles. And then I'm going to click Calculate, and it should take us back to the preview toolpath form. So let's go ahead and preview that. And if we just zoom in a little on the 3D view, we can see that that's added some nice decoration to our part. So I'm just going to go back and put that in an ISO view. And the next toolpath we're going to be concentrating on is our trifoils and our quatrefoils. So let's deselect in the white space. And for both of these, quatrefoils and trifoils, we're going to be using a 1/2 inch ball nose tool. Now it'd be nice to actually be able to do the quatrefoils and trifoils all in the same toolpath. But we need to remember that our quatrefoil shapes are going to be sitting in this centre circle here. Now we've already machined down an 1/8 of an inch here, whereas our trifoils will be machined down from the top of the material. So even though we want to machine down a 1/4 inch, we need to make sure that the actual quatrefoils go down a further 1/8 of an inch. So we're going to have to do these as two separate toolpaths, even though they're going to be using virtually the same settings except for the depth. So first of all let's do the trifoil shapes. So if we just select the outer trifoil shapes by holding Shift and then going ahead and selecting them all. And once we've done that, we can then close the preview toolpath form and then come up to the toolpath operations and select the profile toolpath. So for these, we're going to start at the top of the material, so that's 0, 0, and we're going to be cutting down a 1/4 of an inch. So just type in there 0.25. Now for the tool, we're going to be using a 1/2 inch ball nose. Now as you can see, I don't actually have a 1/2 inch ball nose there available. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a new one. So if we just select the 1/4 inch ball nose, and then we come down to the options at the bottom and just select to copy. I'm going to select the top option. And the first things that we need to remember when creating any new tool is that we need to make sure that the first things we do is specify the diameter and change the name. So the diameter we're going to change to 0.5, and we need to make sure that the name also represents that as well. And once we've got that, we can then go ahead and specify the rest of our parameters. So I'm going to change the pass depth to a 1/4 inch, and the rest of the options look okay for me. Obviously if you're going to run this on the machine, make sure that they are okay for your machine. And when we're happy with that, just press OK. Now for these shapes, we do want to make sure that it's running on the inside of the vectors, so just make sure that we're machining on the inside. And we don't need to add any advanced options, so we can come straight down and just change the name of the toolpath. So I'm just going to call this Profile Trifoils, and then click Calculate. If we just zoom in a little on the 3D view, we can see that the toolpath has been overlaid onto the material block. So if we just go ahead and just preview that, you can see that that toolpath has given us a nice scalloped edge around our trifoils. So we're going to do the same sort of thing now to our quatrefoils. So just deselecting the white space, and then again select the outer quatrefoil shape on all three. Oh, that was the inner. And then we can close this preview toolpath form and go straight over to the profile toolpath again. Now you might think we might want to start an 1/8 inch down into the material, as we have pocketed out this area here, but we've got to be careful of the fact that this shape here is still 1/8 of an inch, or literally the same height as the top of the block, and we don't want to be plunging down an 1/8 of an inch into that with our tool. So what we're going to do is we're going to start cutting from the top of the block, and we're going to cut down an 1/8 of an inch extra than we need to. So I'm going to specify 1/4 inch plus 0.125 and then press equals, and that gives us the value that we're going to cut down. So again, we're going to use the 1/2 inch ball nose tool. We can just select the edit button there just to make sure that the speeds and feeds are appropriate, and if they are, just press OK. Again, we're going to be machining on the inside of the vectors, so make sure that this option here is selected. We're not going to do any of the advanced stuff, we're just going to go straight down and again just give this a name. So just call this profile Quatrefoil and then click calculate. And again, this has overlaid the toolpath on the material block, so we can just go ahead again and just preview that. And as you can see again, that's given us a nice scalloped edge to our quatrefoil. So the next toolpath we're going to be concentrating on is also going to be using a 1/2 inch ball nose. Now it's wise to keep all toolpaths that use the same tool together, so that obviously when it comes to saving out the toolpaths at the end, we can actually save them out all as one file. So it makes sense for us next to finish off our ball nose toolpaths. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the drawing tab, so I can then switch off the foils layer and I can turn back on the top and bottom grooves layer. So for this, I'm just going to press F11 on the keyboard. And that'll take us back over to the drawing tab. And we can then go to the layers drop down here. We can turn off the foils layer and we can then turn on the top and bottom shapes. As you can see, that it's warning us that the foils layer is still the active layer, as it's now in red. So we just need to simply come over the top and bottom grooves and then just simply click that to make that the active layer, and we can press close on this form. The idea here is that we actually run the ball nose tool between this rectangle here and in between this rectangle here. But it might actually be easier for us to actually just draw a line and have the tool run on that line from start to finish. So to do that, I'm just going to expand the 2D view by clicking that button there, and then I'm going to click F on the keyboard to zoom to fit. And then I'm going to go to the polyline tool, and I'm going to snap to the center point of this side here. So you'll see that as soon as I go near it, it will change the icon to let me know that it's going to snap to the midpoint. So just click once with the left mouse button and then drag it over and wait for it to do that same sign again on this side, like so. And once you've done that, to accept that line, just hit space bar on the keyboard, and that'll accept that line and keep us in the polyline tool. And we can do again the same to the bottom. So just draw it from one side of the rectangle to the other. And when we're finished, to accept this one and then come out of the polyline tool, just simply click the right mouse button. Now we've got our lines that our tool can trace along. What we might want to do as well is actually just extend these vectors out slightly so that the tool doesn't come along and literally just stop there, leaving us with a radius on either side of here. We may want it just to overcut slightly so that then when we do the cutout path, we aren't going to be left with a radius. So the best thing for us to do is, while this line is still selected, hold shift on the keyboard and select the other line. Then we can group those two vectors together so that they act as one. And so to do that, we simply can click G on the keyboard, and that will then group them. And while they're still highlighted, what we can do is we can come to this icon here, which allows us to move, scale, and rotate the selection. So that'll then bring these into transform mode. So with that in mind, what we want to do is we want to come to one of these arrows here and hold shift and want to drag outwards to the right. So this will then allow us to then expand these vectors from the center point. So it'll expand them both on the left side and the right side from the center. So hold shift and just simply just drag outwards, and we just want them to come just past the boxes that we've drawn underneath. And once we've done that, we can simply just deselect that in the white space and press escape on the keyboard to exit the transformation mouse icon. And we can come out of the move, scale and rotate mode by simply coming over to the selection mode arrow. So what we want to do next is we want to actually toolpath those. So simply select those lines, go to the toolpath tab, and we can go to close the preview toolpath form and go straight into the profile toolpath. We know that we want to do this from the top of the material, so 0, 0 is OK there, and we want to cut down 1/4 of an inch, so let's type that in the cut depth there. Make sure that our ball nose of 1/2 an inch is selected, and just select edit, just to make sure that the speeds and feeds are all OK. And we want to make sure this time that we're going to be machining the vectors on. So once we've done that, we can go down and then just give this a name. I'm just going to call this profile, top and bottom. And I'm just going to scroll down and click calculate. This will then bring us straight back to the preview toolpath, where it's going to allow us to view the toolpath. So as you can see, it's already overlaid that onto the material block. So if we just simply select to preview that, we should be able to view the scalloped lines. Look, and as you can see, that's all looking okay. So for our next toolpath, we're going to be concentrating on the V-carving shapes. So we may want to go back to the horizontal view. So we've got the 2D and 3D view displayed at the same time. So I'm just going to hit the page down key on the keyboard for that. And a quick way to get to the layer manager, as what I want to do is I want to turn off the top and bottom grooves layer and turn on the V-carve shapes layer. So a quick way to get to just the layer manager on its own, rather than going back to the drawing tab, is simply just to press Ctrl and L, and that will take us straight to the layers tab. So while we're in here, we can turn off the top and bottom grooves, turn on the V-carve shapes, and again, just make sure, as you can see at the moment, that the still current active layer is top and bottom grooves. So we just need to make sure that we select and make sure that it's turned bold for the V-carve shape. And once we've done that, we can simply hit F12 on the keyboard to return back to the toolpaths. And again, we've got a similar situation as we did with our quatrefoil and trifoil shapes, where some of our V-carving shapes are going to start at a lower depth than some of the other shapes. So some shapes are going to start from the top of the block, and some are actually going to start an 1/8 inch down in these circles here. So what we want to do is we want to just highlight the inner circle shapes, as we'll V-carve those first. So to do that, we can simply drag a box around our inner circle shapes like this. Now what we want to do is, if we drag in a box from left to right, we need to make sure that all the items that we want to be selected are all enclosed within that box. So we can do it like this at the moment, where we're still just touching the tips of the other V-carving shapes, but because they're not fully enclosed within that box, they're not going to be selected. So we can just select those like that, and we can do that again for the other three inner circle shapes, but whilst holding the shift key down. So again, just draw that box. The other method we have is dragging from right to left. Now, when dragging from right to left, we have to only just touch or enclose any of the actual vectors. So if we were to just select these ones, we just need to make sure that only those vectors are enclosed or touched by the box that we draw. So again, holding shift, we want to make sure that this time we only touch these vectors. Else, I'll just quickly demonstrate, those ones will be selected as well. So I'm just going to deselect those by holding shift at the same time and select those. And now we've got all the shapes that we want to be selected, we can simply just hit G on the keyboard, which will then group those together. Now for the rest of the shapes, we're going to simply just highlight the lot of them, and we're going to hold Shift down, and we're going to deselect the other shapes that we've just grouped together. So just select any of the ones that we've just grouped, and then we can just hit G again to group the rest of the shapes together. And once we've done that, we can then concentrate on doing the V-carving toolpath for these. So let's close the preview toolpath form, and let's go to the V-carving toolpath. For this, we're going to be having a start depth at the top of the material for these shapes. So this is going to be 0, 0. And the tool we're going to be using, so if we select the select button, we'll go straight into the tool database, and we're going to use a 90 degree 1 1/4 inch V-bit. So just make sure that these parameters are all okay, and once we've checked them over, just press OK on that, and we can skip down to giving this a name. So I'm just going to call this V-carve outer shapes, and press the calculate button. And as you can see on the 3D view, that's drawn the outline of the toolpath for us. So if we just go ahead and just preview that, we should then be able to preview the V-carving decoration, like so. So as you can see, that's turned out quite well. As you can see that in the 3D view there. So the next ones we want to do are the inner V-carving shapes. So simply deselect the ones that are selected by clicking into the white space on the 2D view, and then just clicking one of the inner shapes, and then going straight back into the V-carving toolpath form. Now this time, we already know that we're going to be V-carving not off the top of the material, but we're going to be V-carving 1/8 of an inch into the material. So the start depth, we want to specify 1/8 of an inch for this. But the rest of the options should be the same. So just to make sure, click on the edit button on the tool, just to make sure that the speeds and feeds are all the same. And then once we check those over, we can press OK, and we can just give this one a name. So I'm just going to call this V-carve inner shapes, and click the calculate button. And we can preview this toolpath as well. So while it's highlighted, simply select to preview the selected toolpath. And again, we can see that has added some nice decoration to the inner pockets of the circles there. So, like we did with the ball nose, we've kept the V-carving toolpaths together, so that when it comes to actually saving these out, we can also output these as one file as well. So we are almost finished on the toolpath front. We've just got one final toolpath to create, which is going to be our cutouts. That's going to be the cutouts for the trifoils, the quatrefoils, and the actual cutout pass of our part. So I'm going to need to go back to the layer manager so I can just turn off the V-carve shapes layer. So again, I'm just going to press Ctrl and L on the keyboard, and I'm going to turn off the visibility to the V-carve shape layer, and I'm going to turn on the outline shapes layer, and I'm also going to turn on the foils layer. And I'm going to make the outline shape the active layer. And we can go back to the Toolpaths tab by pressing F12 on the keyboard. From the 2D view now, we can start selecting the vectors for our cutout. So let's start by selecting the outline, and then we can hold Shift on the keyboard and then select our inner quatrefoil and trifoil shapes on all of the shapes that we've got on the screen. So let's just go around and just highlight those all. And once we've done that, we can then close the preview toolpath form and then go straight into the profile toolpath option. For this, we're going to be starting from the top of the material, and we're going to be cutting down to the whole depth of the material. Now, just so you know, just to get this, we can just simply type in Z equals, and that should then let us know that we're going to be cutting down 1 inch of material. We now want to specify a suitable cutting tool. So let's go to the select button, and for this I'm going to use a 1/4 inch end mill. Just accept the speeds and feeds for that, and for this I'm just going to edit the parameters, as I want to change the pass depth from 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch, and I only want to do that for this toolpath, so that's why I'm going to use the edit option for that. And when we've done that, we can click OK, Now when it comes to choosing where we actually want to machine the vectors, we actually want to machine on the outside of this rectangle. What we want to do is we want to machine on the inside of these vectors. Now when in the selection we've got vectors inside another vector, the software automatically will presume that we want to cut on the outside of the outermost vector and on the inside of these inner vectors. But what it also does, it also knows that we also want to cut these inside vectors first and the outermost vector last, so that we don't end up cutting out the shape before we've actually finished cutting the inside of the part. So let's make sure that we select to machine on the outside. For this toolpath, I'm not going to add any tabs, as I'm going to presume that we've got another way of holding the part down. What I am going to do though is I'm going to add some leads to our toolpath. So check the box here to add some leads, and we're going to have a circular lead, and we're going to have a radius of our circular lead in of 1 inch, and a total lead length of 1/2 inch. And we're also going to have a lead out, so make sure that this option is checked here, and we're going to do an overall distance for our lead out as 1/4 inch. So just type in that there. Now what this is going to do, this is going to arc into the actual cutout pass from 1/2 inch away, and it's going to arc in, it's then going to go and do its cutout for the first pass depth, and it's going to come round, and then it's going to do the overcut distance of 1/4 inch, so it's going to pass just past where it arced into before, and then at 1/4 inch, and then it's going to arc out from there, and then it's going to do the same again for each pass depth. Now what this is designed to do is designed to stop the tool plunging in directly onto the edge of the part that we're actually going to be cutting out. It's designed to prevent any damage to the part where the actual tool will plunge directly in to the pass depth of the tool. Now once we specify that, we can then go ahead, give this a name, so we can then preview this on the preview toolpath form. So I'm just going to call this profile outside, and then I'm going to click calculate. And you can see that it's come up about a warning, and it's warning us that to avoid gouging, that one or more of the leads that we've specified to have on each of these cutout passes has been removed or reduced to prevent gouging. So just click OK on that to accept that, and we can then go ahead and then check out our toolpath, which has been overlaid on our block of material. So if I just expand this view, we can actually take a look at where our leads are happening. Now you can see that at the moment in the bottom left hand corner is where our leads are starting and ending. So as you can see, our tool is actually going to go into the material here, away from the actual cutout pass that we actually want to create, and it's going to then arc in, go around whatever pass depth it happens to be on at the moment, and then it's going to overcut 1/4 inch, and then it's going to arc out. So it's only ever going to be plunging in or out of actual what is going to be essentially a waste material. But what happens if we actually want to change the start position? We actually arc in and then arc out. So I can tell you that this is all governed by the actual start position of the actual vector that we're going to be cutting. So if we go to the 2D view, and I'll just press F on the keyboard just to zoom in there, I can tell you that you can see by here that the actual green node states that that's where the toolpath is going to start. Now if I just deselect the actual toolpath and then just deselect in the white space, if I select the actual outer box, as this is what it's going to be cutting first, and then go into the node select mode, you'll see straight away that the green point representing the start point for our vector is in the lower left. Now this is where and what dictates where the actual lead in will start. So what we could do is we could actually say put the lead in and out here, and we could take advantage of this midpoint here. So we could simply highlight that, right click it and insert a point, and we could then make that the start position by actually right clicking it and then making start position, or we could use the shortcut of P on the keyboard. So if we do that now, and I'll just press escape on the keyboard to come out of node editing, and then I go to double click on the profile, this will then reselect all the selected vectors, all we should have to do now is simply just press calculate to recalculate it with the new start point. Again, it's going to remind us that some of the leads are going to be clipped or reduced to prevent gouging. Just press OK to accept that, and then you'll see now that our new start point and our new start point for our leads is now in this center of the left hand side of our material. So now we're happy with that, we can go ahead and preview the toolpath. But instead of previewing it all in one go, what we could do, we could step through the toolpath to ensure that the inside pieces were getting cut out first and not the actual cutout for our part. So we can do this simply by using this button here, run to retract, and what that does, it will do it step by step, so every pass depth will count as a retract. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click this once, and you'll start to see that this shape has started to be cut out. So I'll just do that again. So 2, 3, 4. So, okay, that was 4 passes to reach the full depth of the material, which is exactly what we asked it to do, as we specified a 1/4 inch patch depth. And we can just keep clicking this just to run through all the steps of the toolpath, just to ensure that it is running in the order that's going to be suitable for us. And that's all the shapes now, so it should now start on the actual cutout of the outer vector as well. So let's just step through. As you can see, that's done that. So you can also see that the lead in and lead out is visible there. And there we go. So as you can see, that's cut out exactly how we expected it to. Now, what we could do to get a true sense of the final product that we're going to be cutting out is to actually get rid of the waste material. Now we can do this by simply just double clicking on all the material that's not connected to any other parts of the material on this material block, and that will then remove it. So simply double click on all the bits that would essentially be waste material, and that will then remove it from the 3D view to leave us with what will be our final product. What we could do now is, now we've got our final product, we could simply save a preview image, and we could then send that to our customer for approval. And if we then get the go-ahead, we could then go ahead and select these toolpaths to then save out to the machine. So we could then go to Save Toolpaths, and we've got the pockets, the outer circles, that all both use the 1/4 inch end mill. So what we could do is save these both out by selecting this option here to output all visible toolpaths to one file, and then we could then select to do our ball nose toolpaths all as one file, and we could then do our V-carve shapes as one file, and then finally we could then do our profile cutout pass. And one last thing that I always advise is to save our work, so that if we do need to come back and edit any toolpaths, we can do. So I'm just going to call this Quatrefoil panel vector, and I'm just going to add toolpaths to the end of that, and then press save. And that's it for this tutorial. Thanks for watching.